Adrian Younge, and the concept that has brought this music to a whole new world of folks. Adrian Younge with Jazz is Dead on member-supported Jazz, 90.1 and Jazz901.org, 585-966-5299, or folks can pledge securely online over at Jazz901.org. It's been so great to talk to so many people from around the world about why we love this music so much. And this morning, Adrian Younge got up really early for us on the West Coast. Adrian, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's good to hear your voice, man.
Yeah, so last time, actually, Adrian, we met about 10 years ago in South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, when we were doing the show. So,
wow.
A lifetime ago.
That's a long time ago, man.
Yeah. 2011 seems like it was a century ago.
Yeah, seriously, right?
So for folks who are just learning about you, talk about your journey and why this music means so much to you, because you've been able to literally bring a whole new generation of folks to the door of jazz, and we can't thank you enough for doing it.
Well, I mean, Black music is history, right? And jazz is really a political statement that relies on dissonance to show harmony. So coming from the fact that it was our freedom music, it was our rebellious music, that is the ethos that speaks to my culture that I grew up with, which is hip hop. And hip hop served as a conduit to the past to so many people, because this was one of the first times, I will say, that Black people were actually focusing on past genres of music. Because usually, as we evolve musically, you leave behind all that greatness, But with hip hop, we sampled so much of that great music, so much of that great jazz, that jazz became a part of our subculture, and it is continuing to grow into where it is today.
Speaking with Adrian Younge and on Jazz 90.1. So Adrian, the concept of Jazz is Dead, where did that come from? Because it's so incredible, because folks now are learning about Gary Bartz for the first time, and folks like Doug Karn for the first time, and Roy Ayers for the first time. So how did you come up with that concept?
Well, basically, before COVID, we were throwing concerts, and my manager, my partner, so Jazz is Dead is me, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Adam Block, and Andrew Laharo. And one day, Andrew Laharo said, I need a name for this concert series we're going to be doing. And he was having difficulty just getting people to come out. And he was like, damn, Jazz is Dead. And he's like, wait a minute, Jazz is Dead. And then we all had this discussion. It was like, hey, what if we started a company calling it Jazz is Dead, but we do the illest jazz stuff in the world? So make a long story short, we were bringing out Gary Bartz, Roy Ayers, Brian Jackson, Doug Karn, Gene Karn, so many, Marcos Valle, Joao Donato, Arthur Veracai. We brought out all these people under the moniker of Jazz is Dead. And then at the same time, what we were doing is bringing them into my fully analog studio to record new music. So basically, Jazz is Dead is more of a rhetorical statement, where I'm not telling you what it means, but based on what we're doing, you should be able to decipher what we're really trying to say,
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking to Adrian Younge. Adrian, when we first met, you were doing a presentation about essentially what was going to happen now in terms of digital, how people can protect themselves in terms of copyright and digital music, because where things are happening so quickly. 10 years ago, it was a wild, wild west in terms of who owned music and what does that really mean. Remember that discussion we had?
Absolutely.
And now here we are. We're living that reality that we talked about 10 years ago.
Yeah, free Spotify and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was because we're talking about when this happens, how do we in terms of radio, how do we as musicians and broadcasters and everybody in this industry, how can we adjust and pivot in terms of making sure we can continue to present music to folks? So now 10 years later, how do you see in terms of where music is headed in terms of presenting as well as all of it?
Well, ultimately, the future is going to be that the artist is going to have a lot more control than they once had. And if you look at the ideology of musicianship, being a professional musician, we're slowly gaining more and more power. So what social media has done for us is allow us to have our own television stations, right? We can promote
Right.
ourselves, do our own thing. And that is closely related to how we disperse our music, you know? So to me, eventually it will just be in our hands and we could do whatever we want to with it. It's a little far away, but we're getting closer. 10 years from now, we're going to talk about this.
Absolutely. Again, I'm thinking, I can't wait, because 10 years ago we were talking about just what could possibly happen, and here we are living it. So
Yeah.
I just remember that when you mentioned that 10 years ago in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Speaking with Adrian Younge. So Adrian, for you, how were you able to survive 2020? Because so much happened, obviously, in the civic side, as well as obviously with COVID. So how were you able to survive it, and what did you learn? What did you learn about yourself from it?
So I need the listeners to listen to this, right? This is very important. So as an artist, as a creative, the hardest job is to be broke. And we are senior veterans at being broke musicians. So at the time when everyone else is broke, it's like, oh, y'all tripping? This ain't nothing. So what we did was focus on creating content, because when we create content, content is wealth. And you're going to put yourself in the position to exceed expectations when things get back to normal. So those of us that couldn't go out and tour and do shows, you need to finish those albums with an S. You need to create more content. You need to diversify, and that's what I did. And then I created my project, The American Negro, the film 10, and my podcast, Invisible Blackness. So like, I was able to take my career to a whole new level because I focused on myself and self-investment at a time when everyone else was scared.
It is speaking to Adrian Younge on Jazz 90.1. Adrian, for the past year, folks have discovered this music for the first time. Things that we take for granted, like Marvin Gaye or Miles Davis or Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, they're learning about these people for the very, very first time this past year. So for newbies to the music, what advice would you give them?
My advice to newbies is that, so I have a record store here in Los Angeles called the Art Form Studio, and I focus on very boutique classic music. And I always tell people that new music to me are old records I've never heard before, because I love old music so much. I love the standard. And that's not to say that there's not great new music around, but when you look back in order to look forward, your mind is wide open. So I advise people to look at the inspirations of the artists you love right now and see what you could pull from that, because it could give you a better perspective on music and life in general.
Speaking with Adrian Younge. Adrian, so for you, what is 2021 looking like? Because you have so many projects going on. You have a podcast, you have the different releases coming up. What else do you have coming out?
So for me, 2021, I'm doing a lot of scoring, film scoring and television scoring. One of the things I'm doing right now is Queen Latifah's show, The Equalizer. Me and Ali Sheed Muhammad are scoring that. And the other things that we're scoring, we can't really announce yet. Some stuff that we finished scoring a documentary on Rick James, which is insane. I cannot wait for people to watch that on Showtime. We scored the movie Boogie that recently came out like a month or two ago. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff, but right now it's scoring and more Jazz is Dead albums. We have upcoming, we'll have Brian Jackson, Joao Donato, Gene Carn. We'll have Phil Ranlin and Wendell Harrison. We have so many, Lonnie Liston Smith. We got so much crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what it's looking like for me, man.
Oh, that's incredible. Speaking with Adrian Younge. Adrian, for those artists that you mentioned, how were you able to did they approach you, or did you approach them, or just like, how did that happen?
Well, we approached them because what most people don't realize is that these artists were incredible and still are incredible. And in some cases, even better now than they were back then. But they're not getting the shine, they're not getting the shot. So for a hip hop cat like me, you never ever think that there's a time where you could grow up and be savvy enough as a musician and a producer to record with one of these venerable icons. So it's just understanding the moment and literally reaching out and having them fall in love with you, man, because they're at a time where they're retired, they're chilling, but we're saying, hey, man, there are so many people out there that want to hear your voice right now. Are you willing to come into this analog studio and do it the same way you did it when you were 20 years old, man? Let's go back. Let's do it. Let's make something for the future. And it really excites them. And it's just paying homage to the people that really helped inspire me personally.
Mm.
So it's a lovely thing.
And is speaking with Adrian Younge here on Jazz 90.1. Adrian, as we were talking before we went on, we're a public station in Rochester, New York. We're heard all over the globe, but yet we are 100% listener supported. So for folks, why is it important for people to continue to support public radio and places like ourselves, jazz radio?
Well, it's very important because you have to understand, the listeners have to understand what radio means today versus what it meant even 30 years ago. There was a time when local radio stations could play great local music, great new music, and just anything that they wanted to. And then radio became so homogenized that you're hearing everyone play the same thing over and over. There's no sense of discovery. There's no relationship with the DJ. But with this station now, if you support this station, you can support new perspectives on music. You could support the anti-corporate, you play this and nothing else. So like, can we please keep this alive so that people like myself and other musicians can shed new light on where music should be going?
But Adrian Younge, a member-supported Jazz 90.1. Adrian, for folks who want to learn more about you and your incredible world, where can they go?
Just find me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. It's just Adrian Younge with the E, ADRIAN YOUNGE. And you'll find me.
And then you'll be amazed. Adrian, thank you so much for taking jazz further. Thank you so much for taking life further with all of your work.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.